All right, so today we're going to dive into the world of LLMs, those AI brainiacs like ChatGPT, and how they might shake up scientific research,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
specifically systematic reviews.
Right.
And we've got a fascinating study fresh out of the British Journal of Ophthalmology.
Oh, wow.
Really interesting stuff.
So, what makes this study so interesting is that it tackles, like, the question of whether these LLMs can actually, like, deliver on their promise,
Yeah.
to make research, like, faster and more efficient.
Yeah.
So they looked at how well LLMs could help researchers identify the right papers to include in systematic reviews, which, are essential for understanding the scientific consensus on a particular topic.
That's right. Yeah. They're like, the ultimate cheat sheet for medical research, but way more rigorous.
Hmm.
In this case, the researchers used 3 recent systematic reviews on diabetic retinopathy prevalence as their, benchmark.
Okay.
They covered a bunch of different populations, from the general population to pregnant women and even children with type 2 diabetes.
Wow. So they really wanted to put these LLMs through the ringer.
They did. They did.
Interesting.
Yeah. And they tested out 2 main approaches:
Okay.
a fully automated one where the LLM does all the work,
Right.
and a semi-automated one where the LLM acts more like a research assistant.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So let's start with the fully automated approach. Did the LLMs pass the test? Did they become like the ultimate research robots?
Well, not quite. Even the most advanced AI, still needs a little bit of human help.
Really?
Yeah. They tested a few different GPT-4 plugins, but the accuracy was, honestly, it was pretty underwhelming.
Hmm.
The best one only managed to identify about a third of the relevant papers.
Huh. So much for replacing researchers with robots anytime soon.
Yeah, exactly. It seems like relying solely on search algorithms to, like, find all the relevant papers is still a bit too ambitious for, today's technology.
Yeah. What about the semi-automated approach, where researchers and the LLM team up?
Now, this is where things get really interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so in this setup, researchers, they use the same search strategies they normally would,
Mm-hmm.
but then they feed the titles and abstracts of the papers to GPT-4's API for an initial screening.
Okay.
So the LLM would categorize each paper as to exclude, not sure, or to include,
Uh-huh.
and it would even provide reasoning for its decisions.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
So then researchers would only need to do a full review of the to include or not sure papers.
That's pretty clever. It's like having a superpowered research assistant pre-screening your papers. How much did this approach actually, speed things up?
The results were really impressive.
Mm-hmm.
Like this LLM-assisted approach, it correctly identified over 80% of the relevant papers across all 3 systematic reviews.
Wow.
And even better, it correctly excluded over 90% of the irrelevant ones.
That's huge. That's a huge time saver.
Yeah. Think about what that means for researchers. They'd be spending way less time, sifting through papers, and that means potentially life-saving research could get into practice much faster.
Yeah, yeah. Talk about a win for efficiency. But I'm guessing even with this collaborative approach, the LLMs weren't completely flawless.
You're right. Even the best AI still has, room for improvement.
Yeah.
When the researchers dug into the errors, the LLM made, they found a couple interesting things.
Okay.
So first, it seems that LLMs still struggle to consistently, like, pick out all the relevant information, especially when they're dealing with longer, more complex scientific papers.
Interesting. So it seems like even AI needs a good dose of critical thinking skills to really understand the nuances of scientific research.
Right, exactly.
What else did they find?
They also found that sometimes the LLM would exclude papers based on, let's just say, questionable logic.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So for instance, in one case, it excluded a paper because it thought patients diagnosed under 20 years old didn't meet the criteria of being 21 or younger.
Wait, what? That seems like a pretty basic math error.
Right.
You'd think an AI would have no trouble with that.
Yeah. It's a good reminder that, while LLMs are becoming incredibly sophisticated, they're still learning.
Right.
They haven't quite reached the point where they can, like, perfectly apply complex logic in every single situation.
Yeah.
And speaking of learning, there's another, like, intriguing finding from this study.
Okay.
When researchers tried feeding the LLM each inclusion and exclusion criterion separately, instead of all at once, the accuracy actually decreased.
Oh, that's interesting. Why would giving it less information make it perform worse?
It seems that giving the LLM the full context of all the criteria together
Uh-huh.
actually helps it make more accurate decisions. It's as if breaking down the information into smaller pieces makes it harder for the LLM to see the big picture.
Huh. So context is key for these LLMs, just like it is for humans.
Right.
It really highlights the importance of understanding how these AI systems, process information
Mhm.
and how to present it to them in a way that helps them perform at their best.
Exactly, yeah.
But before we go any further, let's pause for a moment and think about what all of this means for you, the listener.
This isn't just some abstract research project happening in a lab somewhere. This stuff has, real world implications, especially when you consider that, systematic reviews are the bedrock of evidence-based medicine.
Yeah.
They're what help doctors make informed decisions about treatments and interventions,
Yeah.
which ultimately impacts the care you receive.
That's right. So even if you're not a researcher yourself, this research could still have, a direct impact on your health and well-being.
Yeah.
But it also raises some, fascinating questions about the future of research itself. If LLMs continue to improve, could they eventually play a more significant role in other aspects of the research process?
Oh, absolutely.
Could they help researchers design better studies or even help them come up with new research questions?
Now we're getting into some truly thought-provoking territory. Where do we draw the line between human ingenuity and AI assistance in research? And what happens if an LLM makes a mistake
Yeah.
that has, real-world consequences? Those are some, big questions that we need to start like grappling with as AI becomes more and more integrated into our lives. But maybe that's a conversation for another deep dive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are some pretty weighty questions to ponder, but it's important to remember that we're still in the early stages of exploring what LLMs can actually do.
Yeah, totally. It feels like every day there's a new headline about some amazing AI breakthrough, but it's easy to get caught up in the hype and forget that these are still relatively new technologies.
Exactly. And just like with any new technology, we need to be thoughtful and deliberate about how we develop and use it. Especially when it comes to something as important as scientific research where accuracy and reliability are paramount.
Right before the break, we were talking about the potential for LLMs to not just assist with research, but also to change how we communicate those scientific findings to the public. That feels like a game changer, especially in this age of misinformation, where it's so hard to separate fact from fiction.
Imagine if we had LLMs that could take those complex scientific papers and translate them into plain language that anyone could understand.
Yeah.
It could truly democratize access to knowledge and empower people to make more informed decisions about their health, their lives, the world around them.
That's a really powerful idea, but it also makes me wonder about the potential for bias. We've all seen examples of AI systems that reflect the biases present in the data they were trained on. How can we be sure that LLMs used for science communication wouldn't unintentionally perpetuate those biases?
That's a crucial point. The datasets used to train these LLMs need to be carefully vetted and as diverse as possible to minimize the risk of bias. And just as we need to critically evaluate research findings presented by humans, we also need to develop methods for scrutinizing information generated by AI.
So it's not just about making information more accessible, it's also about making sure that it's accurate and trustworthy. We need to be able to trust the source, whether it's a human expert or an AI system.
Absolutely. And that trust is built on transparency. We need to understand how these LLMs are arriving at their conclusions, just as we expect transparency from human researchers.
Yeah.
This means being open about the limitations of these models and acknowledging that they can make mistakes.
It's like we need a new set of guidelines for evaluating information in the age of AI, a way to separate the wheat from the chaff when it comes to AI-generated content.
Perhaps a system of verification of peer review, similar to what we have for scientific publications, could be adapted for this purpose. We could also explore ways to educate the public about the capabilities and limitations of LLMs, empowering them to be critical consumers of information, regardless of the source.
So it's about fostering a culture of critical thinking, healthy skepticism, and media literacy in the digital age that feels more important now than ever before. But shifting gears a bit, I'm curious, why did the researchers in this particular study focus on diabetic retinopathy?
Diabetic retinopathy was a strategic choice for a few reasons. First, it's a leading cause of vision loss globally, so there's a clear public health imperative to advance research in this area. And second, there's a wealth of existing research on diabetic retinopathy, providing a robust data set for training and evaluating the LLMs.
So it's a condition with high stakes and lots of data makes sense, but the implications of this research go far beyond just one medical condition, right?
Exactly. The challenges and opportunities identified here apply to any field where systematic reviews are used to synthesize scientific evidence from cancer research to climate change to economics. The principles of accuracy, transparency, and ethical use of LLMs are universal.
It seems like we're at a pivotal moment on the cusp of a new era in research where AI plays a more prominent role. But with every exciting new frontier, there are also potential pitfalls, right? I mean, are there any downsides or risks associated with integrating LLMs more deeply into scientific research?
That's a question we can't shy away from. One potential risk is the misuse of these technologies to generate misleading or even harmful information. Imagine an LLM intentionally trained on biased data to produce results that support a particular agenda, even if it contradicts the scientific evidence.
Wow, that's a scary thought. It's like
Yeah.
the digital equivalent of cherry-picking data to support a predetermined conclusion.
And it's not just intentional manipulation we have to be wary of, even with the best intentions. LLMs could still pick up subtle biases or inaccuracies present in the training data, unintentionally skewing their output.
So it seems like the old adage garbage in, garbage out applies to AI just as much as it does to anything else. We need to be incredibly mindful of what we're feeding these LLMs and how those inputs might affect their outputs.
Exactly. We need to establish clear ethical guidelines and regulations for the development and use of LLMs, just as we do for any technology, with the potential to impact humanity on a large scale. It's about ensuring that these powerful tools are used responsibly and for the benefit of society.
I'm getting some serious nuclear technology vibes here. Incredible potential for good, but also the possibility for misuse with potentially devastating consequences.
That's a powerful analogy. The development of LLMs requires the same level of care, consideration, and foresight that we'd apply to any technology capable of reshaping our world.
So, given all of that, what are some concrete steps we can take to mitigate the risks and ensure these LLMs are used ethically in research?
Transparency and open access are key. The data sets used to train these models should be publicly available for scrutiny and evaluation. We also need to be upfront about the limitations of LLMs, making it clear they're not infallible and can make mistakes.
So, no more touting them as magic bullets or replacements for human researchers.
Exactly. About framing them as powerful tools that can augment human intelligence, not replace it. LLMs can help us be more efficient and effective, but they should never be seen as a substitute for human judgment and critical thinking.
It's all about finding the right balance between human expertise and AI assistance, a collaborative approach where each leverages their strengths.
Precisely, and that balance will continue to evolve as LLMs improve.
Hmm.
It's an ongoing conversation we need to have as a society, navigating the ethical and practical implications of this technology.
Speaking of evolution, one of the things that blows my mind about LLMs is their ability to learn and adapt. They're not static programs. They're constantly learning and getting better at what they do. It's almost like watching a child grow and develop.
That's a great analogy, and it highlights one of the key differences between LLMs and traditional computer programs. Traditional programs are designed to follow a strict set of pre-programmed rules, but LLMs are more like flexible learners that can adapt to new situations and solve problems in creative ways.
It's not just about telling them what to do, it's about what they learn to do on their own, how they evolve over time. That's what makes them so exciting and potentially transformative.
We're just beginning to scratch the surface of what LLMs are capable of. It's a new era of artificial intelligence filled with promise and uncertainty.
That uncertainty is both exhilarating and a bit unnerving. But I believe that with careful planning, open dialogue, and a commitment to ethical principles, we can harness the power of LLMs for the greater good.
I share your optimism. We need to approach the development and use of LLMs with a sense of responsibility and purpose. But now to bring things back down to earth, let's shift our focus to what the future holds for LLMs in scientific research. Where do you see this technology heading in the next 5 to 10 years?
Now, that's a question that really sparks the imagination. I can envision LLMs being seamlessly integrated into every stage of the research process, from formulating research questions to designing studies, analyzing data, and even communicating findings.
I think you're spot on. It won't just be about automating tasks, but about using LLMs to augment human intelligence and enhance our capacity for conducting groundbreaking research. We might even see them playing a significant role in personalized medicine, helping doctors tailor treatments to each patient's unique needs.
It sounds like science fiction coming to life, but as we've seen, the line between science fiction and reality is becoming increasingly blurred.
Indeed, and LLMs are poised to play a key role in shaping that future. This deep dive has certainly given me a lot to ponder.
Me too. It's been an incredible journey exploring the potential of LMs and grappling with the ethical considerations. But before we get too carried away with visions of the future, let's bring it back to the present. We've covered a lot of ground today, from the nuts and bolts of LLMs to their potential in research and the ethical considerations we need to keep in mind.
Yeah, it's been a very comprehensive exploration.
Before we wrap things up entirely, I want to loop back to a crucial point we touched on earlier, the indispensable role of human expertise in this era of AI.
It's paramount that we never lose sight of that.
Exactly. LLMs are incredible tools, but they're not a replacement for human judgment, critical thinking, or creativity.
They're partners, not replacements.
Perfectly put, as we move forward into this exciting new frontier of AI-assisted research, the true magic lies in the synergy between human ingenuity and these remarkable machines.
That's a powerful message to leave our listeners with. It's the fusion of human and artificial intelligence that holds the greatest promise for groundbreaking discoveries.
And with that inspiring thought, we're going to take a quick pause, but don't go anywhere. We've got one final part to this deep dive coming up. We'll be back shortly to wrap things up and explore some key takeaways from our exploration of LLMs and systematic reviews.
Welcome back to our deep dive, into the world of LLMs and systematic reviews.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has.
Covered a lot.
We have. So before we wrap things up completely, I want to make sure we've got the key takeaways for our listener.
Yeah.
We've learned that while LLMs aren't quite ready to replace human researchers,
Right. They're already proving to be, incredibly valuable assistants.
especially when it comes to those massive time-consuming tasks,
Yeah.
like systematic reviews, the semi-automated approach where LLMs work in tandem with human researchers.
Right.
That seems to be the sweet spot right now.
Yeah, and it's not just about speeding things up either. It's about freeing up researchers to focus on the parts of the process that require human expertise, like critical thinking, creativity, and, that spark of ingenuity that leads to groundbreaking discoveries.
Right.
Imagine a world where researchers could spend less time sifting through, mountains of papers and more time designing innovative studies, analyzing data in new ways, and translating our findings into real-world solutions.
Oh, that's a future I want to be a part of.
Right, me too.
Yeah.
But as with any powerful technology, there are also potential risks and ethical considerations we can't ignore.
It all comes down to responsible development and use. We need to be thoughtful about the data used to train these LLMs, develop robust methods for evaluating their performance, and establish clear guidelines for their use in research and beyond.
And we need to be transparent about the limitations of these technologies. LLMs are tools.
Mm-hmm.
And like any tool, they can be misused or misapplied. It's our responsibility to ensure they're used for good.
Absolutely. We need to be critical consumers of information, regardless of whether it's generated by humans or by machines.
Right. And that brings us back to one of the most exciting possibilities we discussed. LLMs is a bridge between the world of research and the general public. Imagine a world where complex scientific findings could be translated into plain language that anyone could understand.
It's a powerful vision.
It is.
Democratizing access to scientific knowledge, empowering people to make, more informed decisions about their lives and the world around them.
But we need to ensure that the information being communicated is accurate and trustworthy. We need systems for verifying the validity of, LLM-generated content and for educating the public about how to critically evaluate that information.
Perhaps we can adapt the systems we already have in place for traditional research publications, things like peer review and fact-checking, to the world of AI-generated content.
That's a great idea. It's about bringing that same rigor and scrutiny to the digital realm, and ultimately it's about fostering a culture of critical thinking where we're all empowered to question, analyze, and evaluate information regardless of the source.
Well, it's been amazing exploring the potential of LLMs with you today.
Yeah.
It feels like we're standing at the edge of a new frontier, full of possibility and a bit of healthy uncertainty.
I couldn't agree more. It's a future that requires us to be thoughtful, responsible, and above all, curious. And on that note, we've reached the end of our deep dive into the world of LLMs and systematic reviews.
Thank you to our listeners for joining us.
And remember, the world of LLMs is constantly evolving. Stay curious, keep exploring, and who knows what amazing discoveries await us just around the corner. Until next time.